Questionable spending of public safety funding. First on Fox, we break down what Safe Streets is buying with thousands of your tax dollars. The war in Israel continues to impact communities here in Baltimore.
The story of him dying, he did not die in vain.
A local man shares his grief after his friend is killed in the attacks.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
We have breaking news out of Minnesota, where 5 police officers have been shot. An hours-long standoff for the suspect ended in Princeton. That's a town about an hour north of Minneapolis.
And here's what we know. The suspect was just taken into custody after barricading himself in a home. All 5 officers are part of a drug task force and were injured while executing a search warrant. Their injuries, though, thankfully not life-threatening. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. For the first time, Fox 45 News has obtained documents shedding light on how Safe Streets spends taxpayer money.
Thousands of dollars are spent on shoes, clothes, and trips to Los Angeles. Those are just some of the receipts from Safe Streets uncovered by Fox 45 News. Mackenzie Frost continues to investigate the Safe Streets program and has the latest spending details in a story you'll only see on Fox 45 News.
New details into how the city's flagship gun violence prevention program is spending taxpayer dollars. Included in the hundreds of pages obtained by Fox 45 News, receipts from Catholic Charities for the Safe Streets sites it manages. The Sandtown Safe Streets site spending more than $5,000 in April at major shoe stores. Expenses necessary for community events, according to the receipts submitted by Catholic Charities to the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The spending doesn't stop there. In 1 month, the Brooklyn Safe Street site spending $1,100 at Shoe City, $900 at Forever 21, and hundreds more at GameStop, Bath & Body Works, and Walmart, totaling $4,000 in March alone. The Brooklyn site shelling out $8,750 to Cornell University for staff development. The documents revealing how some of the federal COVID relief money was also spent by Safe Streets. In June, employees from 3 locations, Sandtown, Brooklyn, and Cherry Hill, flew to Los Angeles. The workers billing the city for everything from airfare to hotels and the hotel bar tab, totaling $2,500 worth of American Rescue Plan money. While these documents shed new light on some of this spending, it also raises new questions. The city is spending tens of thousands of dollars on staff training, but the public can't see who is getting that money, even though the funding comes from taxpayers. Seen time and time and time again. The names of who is doing the training for these workers redacted from these public documents. The Sandtown Safe Street site spending $11,700 in February for training. Cherry Hill doling out more than $20,000 to an unknown entity for training in February and March. These spending questions, just some of the answers that could come from an audit of Monzi.
We know it is taxpayer money, and so it doesn't matter, that it's going to a separate entity or a pass-through. It matters where the money's originating from, and the money's originating from the taxpayers' pockets.
Which is why Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer says the city agency needs to be more transparent in how it's spending. Created in 2020, Monzi is not regularly audited by the audit department, but that could change if this 7-member commission gives the green light and calls on the city auditor to do a probe. Councilman Schleifer, one of the 4 members telling Fox 45 News Monzi should be looked at.
Monzi is a city agency. It is right here in City Hall, and so an agency like that should just be part of the agencies that are audited.
The rest of the commission ignoring questions by Fox 45 News asking about an audit. With an expanding staff, funding coming from one-time federal infusions of cash and growing budgets, Councilman Schleifer argues the public deserves to know how their money is being spent. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
In a statement to Fox 45 News, Catholic Charities says it uses taxpayer dollars to purchase items like shoes for Baltimore City residents to build trust within the community. We have yet to hear back from Mayor Scott's office.
Coming up at 4:30, we'll speak live with the taxpayer advocate on the findings and what comes next. And that brings us to our question of the day. Should there be an independent audit of Monzi? 93% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. We'll check back in at 4:30.
Well, an update now on yesterday's shutdown and major disruption at BWI Airport. We have learned the man who claimed to have explosives in his car has been taken to a local hospital for mental health treatment. Officers originally took the man into custody and halted incoming traffic while state fire marshals investigated his vehicle at the airport's lower entrance. Within the hour, his vehicle was deemed safe, and as now, no charges have been filed.
Crisis in the classroom. Tonight, there's renewed concern and a call for action after two students brought loaded handguns to school in separate incidents, according to police. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell is live with the latest on those investigations. Alexa.
Yes, Kai, we've reached out to both Baltimore County Public Schools as well as Baltimore City Public Schools to get the latest on these cases, including what charges these students are facing. Here's what we know about each case. Here in Baltimore City, a 15-year-old student brought a loaded handgun to Joseph Briscoe Academy. Officials say the teen, who is in the 7th grade, threatened to go get the weapon following an argument with a staff member, and when he returned, was met by City Schools police. The loaded firearm was confiscated and the student taken into custody. Also this week, a student brought a loaded handgun to Sparrows Point High School in Baltimore County. Officials sent this letter to parents saying the student was taken into custody by county police. Students bringing guns to schools has been an ongoing, growing issue across the state. State FOP President Clyde Boatwright says it comes down to access and accountability.
We need to get to a point where people that are making the choice to arm themselves and bring it to the school have an immediate penalty.
Now, both school districts referred us to the respective police department. We've done that and hope to have the latest for you at 5, as well as what Boatwright believes the penalty should be. Reporting live in North Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Next month, lawmakers will hold a hearing into juvenile crime. Two laws are at issue. The Juvenile Justice Reform Act limits children 13 and under from facing most charges, and the Child Interrogation Act prevents police from questioning juvenile suspects without attorney and parent permission. Trust Fox 45 News to bring you complete coverage.
Well, we continue to see utter devastation out of the Middle East 6 days after a surprise and deadly attack on Israel. Here's the very latest. More than 1,400 people have been killed in Gaza and 6,000 more severely injured. Israeli officials say the death toll in Israel is over 1,200 and more than 2,800 people have been wounded. At least 25 Americans have been killed and an unknown number of Americans are being held hostage. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel right now, pledging American support and working to recover those hostages.
There is no excuse. There is no justification for these atrocities. This must be a moment for moral clarity.
Well, we have team coverage tonight. National correspondent Christine Frizzell with new details on the attack in Israel.
First, Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor shares the story of a Baltimore man fearing for his family and grieving the loss of a friend. Rebecca.
Kai and Mary, it's a story that just scratches the surface of the sheer number of lives that have been touched near and far by this war. Today, I sat down with Baltimore business owner Eden Samarit. He tells me that his work has been set aside this week. He is a native Israeli. He said instead of his days being consumed by work, they're consumed with answering the flood of frantic phone calls and texts coming in from family. In total, he says that his sister and 4 young children have warned him at least 30 to 40 times that they were taking shelter from missile attacks. As a former IDF soldier, Samarit also has many friends that are being forced back to serve on the front lines, one of whom lost his life during the first day of attacks.
One of the soldiers sent me, hey, sorry to tell you, but Nakche got killed. I crashed. I don't cry a lot, almost ever. And for 3 days, every half an hour, I would go to the side that my kids and my wife won't see and just cry.
And with the war only escalating and the death count still climbing, Samarit is now doing all that he can to help from afar, from raising funds for tactical gear for his former unit to raising awareness by flying Israeli's flag outside of his shop and running it through the streets. And should the war continue into next month, Samarit says that he will most likely find a flight to go back to Israel to re-enlist in the IDF. Reporting live from the control room, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. Well, tonight, a concerning threat from a former head of Hamas calling for protests around the world.
We're also hearing more calls for others to join the fight as we learn new details about how we got to this point.
National correspondent Christine Frizzell brings us the latest.
A former head of the terror group Hamas designating Friday, October 13th, the day of jihad, calling on Muslims to take to the streets and deliver a message of anger. Also urging Muslims in neighboring countries like Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt to join the fight against Israel, already a major concern for the West.
We're also worried about jihadist groups like in Syria. We have the Iran-backed Shia militia groups in Iraq, and you have all sorts of jihadist groups. That is our worst nightmare.
The massacre in Israel apparently planned for 2 years. Another Hamas leader admitting in an interview with Russia TV that under the guise of providing welfare, Hamas was actually planning for warfare.
في غزة وبدها تدير بالها على 2.5 مليون فلسطيني وملتهية وخلص تركت المقاومة لكن حماس من تحت الطاولة.
The interview, translated by the group Memory, a Middle Eastern research institute co-founded by Israeli Americans, also included a demand members of Hamas detained in the United States be released.
We obviously take seriously our responsibilities to get Americans held overseas back with their families. We have in the past entered into negotiations to do exactly that, and we have not foreclosed any option right now in terms of these particular hostages.
These developments come as Israel has pounded Gaza for days, including at places of worship, schools, and refugee camps. Retaliation for what Hamas calls the Al-Aqsa flood operation, the brutal murder of men, women, and children in Israel. It says it carried out in response to decades of violence against and oppression of Palestinians. A vicious cycle with no end in sight. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
Well, yesterday, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, discussed the impact the fighting is having on the people of Palestine. They say it's important to separate innocent Palestinians from Hamas militants. While CAIR doesn't condone the Hamas attacks, it says Israel forces have been limiting the freedoms of Palestinian people for decades.
The second this thing happened, you have politicians all over saying, oh, we stand with Israel. Okay, I get it. Maybe you can justify it and say you stand with the right to protect the people that are innocent. What about the Palestinians? Why haven't you opened your mouth and said anything for the past 16 years?
Well, the Maryland chapter of CAIR also says at least 7 high school and college students have reached out to the organization over the past 3 days, saying they're being harassed at school for expressing solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Coming up at 4:45, we'll hear from a security expert on the work to free hostages in Gaza.
A rabies warning if you've come into contact with a raccoon anytime recently. What we know about a rabid raccoon found in the area.
Plus, a call from one local prosecutor to follow Pennsylvania's lead and get tougher on drug dealers.
And the commute forecast for this evening shaping up pretty nice. Mild temperatures falling from the 70s into the 60s, mostly clear skies, but we're going to be hard pressed to hit 60 with rain. That's in the forecast. I'll let you know when. My Weather Authority forecast coming up.
Making news around the state today, Anne Arundel County is warning residents about a rabid raccoon. The raccoon was found a week ago in Millersville. Health officials want to speak with anybody who may have come in contact with the animal. We have provided a number on foxbaltimore.com to get in touch with the county's animal care and control.
In Cecil County, a former sheriff's deputy pleads guilty to misconduct in office. Kyle Thomas served as deputy from February of 2021 to July of this year. The charges stem from his alleged relationship with two women. Prosecutors say he used his office to threaten both women after their relationships ended. He's also accused of sharing explicit images of them. Thomas is charged with 1 count of misconduct in office and 1 count of visual surveillance. Sentencing is set for January next year.
We're seeing new video from Montgomery County showing the moment a stolen car crashed during a police pursuit. In the car, 2 teenagers. Take a look.
We're actually on the Democracy. 714, he just wrecked.
This crash happened in November last year. Police say the suspects, who were 16 and 18 at the time, carjacked a man in Gaithersburg at gunpoint. The vehicle crashed not long after that high-speed pursuit, as you just saw. Both teens have been sentenced to 30 years in prison, with all but 11 years suspended. Carroll County state's attorney wants to get tougher on drug dealers and enact harsher penalties in deals that result in death.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live with why he believes it's urgent. Maxine?
Well, Kai, he's hopeful that Maryland's General Assembly will take action similar to what's happening right now in neighboring Pennsylvania.
It's a nationwide epidemic.
It's really a burgeoning problem, and I don't see it abating anytime soon.
Opioid overdose deaths, largely driven by fentanyl, are impacting communities small and large.
And we're seeing it here as well.
Carroll County State's Attorney Haven Shoemaker says they're no exception.
Fact is, of the overdoses that have happened in 2022 and 2023, almost all of those are attributable to fentanyl.
In Maryland last year, there were 2,586 deadly overdoses. Fentanyl was involved in nearly 80% of them.
In Carroll County, in May of last year, we had a young lady who was 18 years old. Her name was Victoria Garofalo. And shortly after buying drugs from an individual, and she died of a fentanyl overdose. And there's very little that we could do to the individual who sold her those noxious chemicals.
In Pennsylvania, where there were nearly double the overdose deaths last year compared to Maryland, lawmakers are looking to enact harsher penalties in drug deals that result in death. With Senate Bill 235, also known as Tyler's Law, in remembrance of 18-year-old Tyler Shanafelter, who overdosed and died from fentanyl-laced Percocet. Shoemaker says Maryland should follow suit, and he's spoken with at least one lawmaker who agrees.
This bill would be patterned after the bill that the Pennsylvania Senate just passed on October 2nd, would impose a mandatory minimum of 10 years and a fine no less than $15,000 for selling drugs that result in someone's death.
Right now, Shoemaker says they can only charge dealers with possession with intent to distribute. Adding manslaughter is often too tough a case to make.
If Pennsylvania can do it, I think it's high time that we did something like that here and get justice for folks like Victoria who I just spoke about.
Now, Shoemaker says that state delegate Christopher Tomlinson, a Republican out of Carroll County, will sponsor such a bill. We did reach out to his office for comment, but we did not hear back. In Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. Well, wicked weather slamming parts of Florida overnight. Video out of Tampa Bay shows damage after 2 possible tornadoes blew through. More than 6 million people across northern and central Florida under a new tornado watch right now. So far, there have been no reports of injuries.
The Fox 45 Weather Authority team is tracking this weekend's weather maker. You're looking at live conditions from Ocean City to right here in Baltimore and Towson. Conditions still pleasant at this hour, thank goodness, Mary.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. An absolutely beautiful day, but there's going to be a little bit of a change for the weekend. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers joins us with our first look at the forecast. I mean, this has to be a 10-plus day. It is so nice.
You know,
perfect,
more
right?
than a day or two in a row. And I mean, we've been really living on borrowed time. Past few days have been real nice around here. And it looks like, yeah, some of the moisture, maybe not the severe weather, but some of the moisture from that weather maker down in Florida, and also a system that's out around Minneapolis and Omaha. See all the rain there, even some snow over portions of the Intermountain West. Look at west of Denver. There's snow falling right now. Well, these two systems going to kind of combine forces and form a new storm that's going to impact us as we head into the weekend. You can see down there toward Florida, there's some of that moisture too, right around Jacksonville, even some severe weather just south and east of Jacksonville occurring right now. For now, though, here, the nice weather continues. Little cold front down to our south, keeping all the bad weather south of that. And there's that stormy weather with that disturbance or that low pressure system, that weather maker that's over northern Florida. And then there's a rain and even snow that's with that northerly system. And again, those will combine forces to give us kind of a mess for Saturday, and actually maybe several days ongoing. Some cool weather and could be kind of unsettled as well. Right now, 74 degrees. Toyota East Harbor Skycam can't really get much better than this. Real October prime around here. Variable winds at 6. Humidity at 34%. Dew points nice and dry at 44 degrees. 74 Baltimore, 74 at Cockeysville. Low mid 70s up at Westminster. 70 degrees out at Elkton. And down toward Annapolis, Stevensville in the upper 60s. Now, warmer numbers south. I think we're enjoying those today, but tomorrow we may see a little bit of a moderation. Winds may switch more northerly. And you see the 60s near 70, Philadelphia northbound. I think that may be our temperatures more so tomorrow, maybe a little bit cooler than today. And then the weekend, the rain comes and the bottom falls out. So out in the tropics, we've got Tropical Storm Sean, which looks like that's going to be diminishing over the next few days. And there's also a medium now chance of development off of the west coast of Africa, south of the Cape Verde Islands. That will shoot eastbound, or rather shoot westbound, I should say, get my directions right there. That potentially could have some slow development over the next couple of days as well. So that'll be something to watch. So around here, the future scan says mainly clear overnight, dropping down to crisp levels once again, probably about 45 to 50, kind of like what we saw this morning. So you need jackets to start. Tomorrow afternoon, maybe not as warm as today, right about 70, 75, probably closer to 70, but a good deal of sunshine. And then into Friday and Saturday, again, it's a wetter, cooler trend that's moving in here. I think for Friday's dry, but notice on Saturday, clouds to start. Temperatures may struggle to about 60, maybe low 60s, and then the rain moves in by midday and afternoon. So get ready for indoor plans by Saturday afternoon. 64 may be generous. I may have to adjust that down to about 60, and it may only be near 60 as well on Sunday. Morning showers, cloudier day on Monday, only 62. So a pattern change here with scattered showers on Tuesday, 63, and it stays in the 60s as we almost wrap up next week.
Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world.
Well, straight ahead, American hostage recovery efforts in Israel, including an interview with a former FBI agent on possible strategies. And the Orioles' 2023 seasons end in October. Painful, manager Brandon. AL East title and shocking postseason exit next.
Hey.
The road through postseason baseball on Fox 45 is sponsored by Johns Hopkins Children's Center.
There's been time for the Orioles to process and step away from 3 games against the Rangers in the ALDS. But the O's poor October outing, an abrupt ending courtesy a postseason exit by a first sweep all season, is still fresh 2 days later. Players are gone. Some will not be back next season, while the young core will, with prospects expected to join them in 2024. For manager Brandon Hyde and GM Mike Elias, they have to wrap their minds around from 101 wins, AL East title, to 0-3 in the postseason, a disappointing ending to a remarkable season.
It's a round bat and a round ball and a round earth that we live in, and sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way, and I think that happened for a lot of our guys, but they did everything they could to gear up and prepare for it, and I'm very, very proud of this group.
It was a really successful season, and overcoming so many odds and obstacles that are against us, and so many people thinking that we weren't going to be a playoff team, and all of a sudden we win 101 games and win the American League East. I mean, that's says a lot about a lot of people. Unfortunately, the postseason we just didn't play our best and ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw. But I'm going to have great memories of this team.
The result all came down to starting pitching. Brandon Hyde saying the starter can't be bounced and create multiple run holes in the second. That's too much in postseason baseball, and the Rangers took full advantage. As the Birds head to their offseason, pitching has to be at the forefront of Mike Elias's mind.
All right, Morgan, thank you. For more on the Orioles postseason journey, make sure to catch our latest episode of Rip and Rock podcast. New episodes drop every Monday. You can stream them anywhere you get your podcasts. And Fox 45 is your exclusive home for the 2023 World Series. The Fall Classic begins Friday, October 27th. You can catch all the action right here on Fox 45. Well, Fox 45 News obtains new documents shedding light on how Safe Streets is spending your tax dollars. And some of the items are questionable. We have a taxpayer advocate standing by live to dig into the report with us. A frightened mom begging for help for a troubled child. Fox 45 News continues our coverage on the juvenile justice system in Maryland.
For the first time, we're seeing how Safe Streets, Baltimore's flagship gun violence prevention program, is spending taxpayer money. Thousands of dollars on shoes, clothes, and trips to Los Angeles.
Fox 45 News is the only station to obtain those documents after relentless questioning.
To help us walk through those findings is David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. David, thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, and this is very disturbing to say the least, because now we're seeing where a lot of these taxpayer dollars are being spent, like you said, and it's very questionable as to these expenditures. And there's a lot of red flags here, right? You have sneakers, you have trips to Los Angeles, and we know that government officials love to travel. We've seen that in Baltimore City time and time again, where they love to travel and that they love to travel. And I want to see the receipts. I want to see how much they paid for flights, how much they paid for hotels, because there may be even more waste on top of the waste we already know about.
And the big question is, do you think city leaders will support an audit for Monzi? There's been a lot of talk about that. Do you see it happening?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, quite literally, is that Monzi needs to be audited. It is not on the regular audit schedule, and I don't know why. And I think a lot of Baltimore City residents probably don't know why it's not on that schedule, because it's consuming a lot of money. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. They're hiring, up to 45 positions for Monzi in the next few years. So this is going to be a huge drain on the city's budget. And quite frankly, we have to also talk about what Monzi is trying to accomplish and making sure that the money is going towards the right purposes, trying to reduce violence, trying to make Baltimore a safer city. And ultimately, that's the goal, is to make Baltimore a safer city. And if Monzi isn't spending the money correctly, and we don't know, we found this information out, but what else are they spending money on? So I think there are a lot more questions than there are answers, and an audit is the first step, and it has to be a regular audit. It can't be once every few years. This has to happen on a regular basis so everyone has access to this information.
And David, how might taxpayers and those who are in charge, like the city council, make some decisions after that audit shows us how that money is being spent? What things should the public be looking for in that audit?
Well, looking for the things that you guys have found, the sneakers, the trips, and really making sure it's going towards the program expenses and not these frivolous things. And then you have Safe Streets, which is, again, another step removed from transparency, because Safe Streets gives money to nonprofits, and nonprofits don't have to report their financials for almost 2 years. One of the nonprofits, Catholic Charities, their latest financial information is from 2021. That is useless. Information from 2021 is useless, and that's why the city has to require, every level here, Monzi, Safe Streets, nonprofits, to put this information out there. And quite frankly, if you're a nonprofit, you should have to report this information almost simultaneously so the city knows that it's being spent wisely.
Yeah, it seems to make sense. All right, we've been speaking with David Williams. He's the president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. David, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And let's check back in on the question of the day. Should there be an independent audit of Monzi? So far, 94% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
I feel like they should be held accountable. It's got to be some consequences. You're not going to learn if you get a smack on the hand. You're not going to learn.
A frustrated Baltimore County mother calls Fox 45 News saying she's at her wit's end.
The mother says her 13-year-old daughter keeps acting out, getting suspended from school and running away, and now she's worried things will escalate. And she fears the teen could become another statistic.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson live after speaking with that mother today. Amy?
Mary Kai, as you well know, this is not the first parent we've heard from asking what they're supposed to do with a child they say is out of control. In eastern Baltimore County.
She's 13 and she's in 7th grade.
This mom says her daughter needs a wake-up call.
It definitely has me feeling like I'm a bad mom sometimes, but I know I'm not.
This mother of 4 not sharing her name or face, but says her daughter is already on her 2nd suspension of the school year after 5 or 6 suspensions last year.
Anytime she does anything, I have a trail of emails.
Her teen daughter, she says, frequently walks out the door, runs away, sometimes brought back with a knock on the door.
She was brought back yesterday by the police officers.
The teen even just recently shared on social media as a missing person. And while this Essex woman says her daughter has never been arrested, she fears the bad behavior could escalate, echoing parental concerns about the lack of juvenile consequences.
I mean, if nothing is done with the behavior now, and this is minor behavior, you know, for her, I'm worried about her future. Our youth is doomed if nothing gets done with just minor behavior like running away.
Desperate for help, this mom says she's researched boarding schools, wanting more discipline and structure for the young teen.
One boarding school I called, they said $9,000 a month, and I just hung up.
Just this week, creating a fundraising page, trying to raise $40,000 for boarding school, fearing for her daughter's future. I do not want her to become another statistic in jail, raped, killed, or a victim of human trafficking, she wrote in part. For now, this mother says she's left to bargain with the 13-year-old to stay put.
I'm gonna give you the phone and the Wi-Fi password, just don't leave my house.
Before things go from bad to worse.
Basically, she can do what she wanna do. There ain't no consequences.
Now, today we did share information with this mom about the CINS program. That's Children in Need of Supervision. And data from Baltimore County Police shows that 12 minors have been involved in that supervision program so far this year. We're live tonight. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. This is just the latest Baltimore family sounding the alarm on the city's crime crisis and the impact on children and teens. Exactly a year ago, we spoke with a Baltimore father who says his 14-year-old son is engaged in a string of carjackings, but is let go each time he's arrested by police.
I got the call from Prince Frederick County and Calvert County telling me that they had him in custody, and they told me what that happened and stuff. And I said, you know what? Let him stay there until his court date. He needs to learn. Let him stay there. No, sir. You have 6 hours to get here to get him, or we'll be coming to get you for neglect and abandonment issue.
Well, earlier this year, we spoke with the grandmother of 12-year-old Jalen Richards. The teen who was on DJS supervision was shot and killed in South Baltimore.
Carjacking. They had him carjacking. These older children, Jalen don't know how to drive. He was just hanging along for the ride. And them older people had already got a catch on him.
Say they're moving out of the city because of the toll of the crime crisis.
It's easier to have children sell drugs for you than you to get a charge yourself to sell drugs. For me to know that my son was struggling with keeping himself out of a gang and didn't know how to communicate with me, that really hurt.
Next month, lawmakers will hold a hearing into juvenile crime. Right now, 2 laws are at issue. The Juvenile Justice Reform Act limits children 13 and under from facing most charges, and the Child Interrogation Act prevents police from questioning juvenile suspects without attorney and parent permission. Trust Fox 45 News to bring you complete coverage.
Interim State Superintendent of Maryland Public Schools, Dr. Carrie Wright, says she wants the job permanently. In her first news conference, Dr. Wright said she's applying for the full-time position beginning in July of next year. Dr. Wright has been brought in to replace State Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhary, who resigned earlier this month following a series of Project Baltimore investigations raising concerns over his leadership. Those concerns included the decision to heavily redact state test scores, making less information available to the public. Dr. Wright called the state's math scores abysmal and said as a public servant, she plans to be open and transparent.
I think we need to be very transparent with our data. I think we need to be transparent with what we're finding is working and is not working. So I'm glad you asked that. Because sometimes you start off.
Dr. Wright previously worked in Prince George's County, Howard County, and Montgomery County public schools, and she recently served as Mississippi's state school superintendent, where she is credited with making major improvements in literacy rates. Project Baltimore in the coming weeks will take a closer look at how she did it and whether it could work in Maryland.
Well, Baltimore City schools are currently out nearly $500,000, money that went towards school police overtime during the pandemic and was never reimbursed by the city.
Project Baltimore's Chris Papps is trying to find out why and whether it could be related to an ongoing FBI investigation.
Hey. Baltimore City Schools has made it clear.
I have a job.
I understand.
So I have to follow what I'm told to do.
The district does not want to speak with Project Baltimore about our recent investigation into school police overtime.
We are not interrupting anything. We are not creating a disturbance. We're just standing here.
We tried to speak with City Schools CEO, Dr. Sonia Santelises, before this week's board meeting, but multiple police officers were standing by, as Andre Riley, City Schools Executive Director of Communications, told us that would not be happening.
This could all be avoided if Dr. Santelises would just give us 3 minutes. 3 minutes is all I need.
She's not.
I know she's not.
So why would you?
Because she is the head of a giant school system, and we believe that she should be answering questions from the media for taxpayers.
Our investigation raised serious questions over how your tax dollars were spent during the COVID pandemic. Baltimore City received $103 million in COVID relief funding from the federal government through the CARES Act. The city used some of that money to set up COVID testing sites, including the Lord Baltimore Hotel. Many city schools police officers were paid overtime to provide security at those sites. And the city schools officer in charge of assigning that overtime?
You want to say something to your players, Coach?
Lawrence Smith.
Bad example of what?
Last month, Smith was arrested by the FBI, accused of fraudulently obtaining more than $215,000 in overtime, which, according to the indictment, involved COVID testing sites. Project Baltimore, through a public records request with the school system, obtained this list of reimbursements that city schools filed with Baltimore City. And take a look at this. From May 2020 to July 2021, city schools submitted more than $600,000 to Baltimore City for the overtime school police worked at COVID sites. You can see the first 5 payments, totaling more than $126,000, were paid. But starting in July of 2020, more than 3 years ago, the city stopped reimbursing the school system. From July 2020 to July 2021, city schools submitted a total of more than $481,000 in police overtime that was never reimbursed. The school system paid the officers for the overtime, but the city never paid the district back, even though Baltimore received hundreds of millions of dollars in federal COVID relief funds.
Baltimore City has one of America's lowest performing public school systems. District leaders constantly say they don't have enough funding to properly educate students. But the district is out nearly $500,000 that went to school police overtime at COVID sites. More than 3 years later, that money hasn't been paid back. Why not? To find out, Project Baltimore needed to know which city agency is responsible for reimbursing city schools using those federal funds. City schools will not tell us. So we sent public records requests to the mayor's office, finance department, police department, and health department, asking for documents related to North Avenue's request for reimbursement. Each department responded the same way. There are no responsive records, which means, as of now, we still don't know what agency is responsible. City schools told us it won't answer our questions because of the ongoing investigation into Lawrence Smith. We don't know why the city still has not reimbursed the school system, or how many police officers collected overtime at these COVID sites. Is it possible more indictments could be coming? I just simply want to know why $500,000 in police overtime has not been reimbursed to the school system. You know the answer. I don't know why you're not telling me.
How do you know I know the answer?
You as in the school system know the answer. When Dr. Santelises eventually entered the boardroom Tuesday night, she was accompanied by a police officer to a different door. We believe taxpayers should know how their money was spent. We will continue to press city leadership to get answers. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Breaking news, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez accused of accepting bribes and more. Up next, we'll have the new charges he and his wife are facing. And we have an update on American hostage recovery efforts in Israel, including an interview with a former FBI agent on possible strategies. The fate of about 150 people taken hostage from Israel is uncertain. At least 17 Americans could be among them. Katie Benty with our Sinclair sister station in Florida reports.
As days continue to drag since the attacks on Israel by Hamas, the U.S. is ramping up its efforts to recover American hostages in Gaza.
The issue is the patience that has to be understood to allow the safety of those special forces.
The National Security Council saying of the 17 Americans unaccounted for in Israel, it's believed less than a handful of them are being held hostage. President Biden speaking at the White House this week, making sure his stance on this upsetting situation is heard loud and clear.
Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world.
But with that comes heavy risks. Former FBI agent Stuart Kaplan explains why approaching the situation at hand has to be done delicately.
Because if in fact there are Americans that are located and identified as being still alive, Hamas may be laying in waiting and think nothing of filming it as if we made a misstep and didn't make a calculated risk assessment and caused the death of another innocent human being.
While a typical hostage situation, there can be trade-offs, in some cases exchanging life for money. But Kaplan says with Hamas, mass devastation is all they want.
There is nothing that the United States has to offer to these Hamas terrorists that would be sufficient in exchange for the release of an American.
Well, as people in Gaza continue to brace for a humanitarian crisis, Israel doubled down on its blockade, saying nothing will be allowed in Gaza until the hostages are freed.
We are tracking the next weather maker right now, kind of in two pieces. There's a severe weather piece that's down in Florida right now with tornado watches that have been up and even some tornadoes around the Tampa area. And then also the HD radar showing a rain and snow portion off to the north. Both those going to kind of combine and upend our really nice weather that we've been seeing around here. Still one more nice day for tomorrow, but there's part one. Part two, again, those kind of congeal just down to our south and leave us with a cool, rainy pattern by the first half of the weekend. Right now, Mile 1 Townsend Camp, gorgeous weather, 74. Open the windows on that trip home. Sunglasses out, winds variable at 6, humidity bone dry at 34%. 74 here in Baltimore, 73 at Cumberland, 76 at Charleston. All these beautiful temperatures for this time of year and above average. Wind switch northerly tomorrow. Notice those temperatures about 65 to 70 off to our north. So may temper the warmth a little bit tomorrow afternoon, maybe closer to about 70 or so instead of mid 70s like today. As we head into this afternoon, this evening, I think it's going to be great for heading for a run or maybe going on the porch doing some barbecuing. By midnight tonight, dropping through the 50s, even into the 40s to near 50 by tomorrow morning. And then as we head into tomorrow afternoon, just a couple of patchy clouds here and there. And then it looks like as we work our way closer to the weekend, the clouds begin to increase Friday night. And then Saturday, the rain develops. Some of the indications are that it may wait until Saturday midday afternoon to really start raining. Either way, it's going to be cooler, though. High 59. May have to trim that down closer to 60 as well on Sunday with some morning showers. Then on Monday, clouds. Back to showers Tuesday, highs in the 60s. And then Wednesday, Thursday, there's your warmer temperatures, mid to upper 60s into the middle and end of next week.
Thank you, Jonathan. Coming up at 5 o'clock on Fox 45, the Hollywood strike is back on. Why the fight over AI in your favorite shows is drawing a wedge in negotiations. Amid high inflation, Social Security benefits are increasing. Straight ahead, how much more recipients should expect to receive next year. Taking a look at the Fox 45 quad box, federal prosecutors have charged New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez and his wife with being unregistered agents of the Egyptian government. The Democrat and his wife are accused of accepting bribes from 3 New Jersey businessmen in helping them with foreign affairs. Inflation held steady in September. The data shows the path forward fully wrangling inflation remains a long and bumpy one. And amid high inflation, Social Security benefits will increase next year by 3.2%. That's an increase of about $59 a month. We'll continue to follow the search for the next House Speaker. The House was in session today but did not pick up the nomination of Representative Steve Scalise. He faces an uphill battle to round up those votes. And someone in Southern California has won the Powerball jackpot worth nearly $2 billion. The cash value, more than $774 million. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, what we're learning as U.S. military leaders make their way to the Middle East. And spending taxpayer money on shoes, games, cross-country trips, and more. We take a look at Safe Streets.
Well, top U.S. defense officials in Israel, the latest on the violence, America's response, and what comes next.
First on Fox, we're getting a look at some questionable spending decisions by Safe Streets, what we're learning about how your tax dollars are being spent.
And twice in 1 week, guns find their way into Baltimore area schools. What's being done to protect kids in the classroom?
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
We have continuing coverage on the war in Israel. Israeli forces are amassing near Gaza. This is a scene along Israel's southern border. The country's military has called up more than 300,000 reservists and are expected to send soldiers into Gaza on the ground any day. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Deadly airstrikes continue throughout the night as Israel prepares for the land invasion. A warning, some of the images you are about to see are disturbing. This is the latest from the ground in Israel and Gaza. Smoke could be seen for miles this morning as Israel continued its retaliatory strikes. This footage showing the moments IDF rockets fell in a residential area. Israel's Defense Force claims it's targeting Hamas leaders and bases that are hidden in Gaza neighborhoods. Hamas claims Israel is indiscriminately targeting civilian areas.
These are pictures from a Gaza hospital. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says more than 1,400 people in Gaza have been killed and more than 6,000 have been severely hurt. Israeli officials say the death toll in Israel is over 1,200 and more than 2,800 have been wounded.
At least 27 Americans have been killed in the conflict and more taken hostage during Hamas's initial attack. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Israel right now, meeting with Israeli soldiers and military leaders and the Prime Minister, pledging American support and working to recover those hostages.
Too often in the past, leaders have equivocated in the face of terrorist attacks against Israel and its people. That's why we've been adamant with all countries in the wake of these attacks. There is no excuse. There is no justification for these atrocities.
Well, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is set to travel to Israel tomorrow, to meet with Israeli leaders and discuss plans for military aid.
Well, Fox 45 News will continue to bring you the latest on the war later this hour. We'll have team coverage looking into the public response in America and hearing from someone here in Baltimore who lost a loved one in the conflict. You can follow along on air and online at foxbaltimore.com.
First on Fox, thousands of dollars spent on shoes, clothes, and trips to Los Angeles. Those are some of the receipts from Safe Streets uncovered by Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie Frost continues to investigate the Safe Streets program and has the latest on these spending details in a story you're only seeing on Fox 45 News.
New details into how the city's flagship gun violence prevention program is spending taxpayer dollars. Included in the hundreds of pages obtained by Fox 45 News, receipts from Catholic charities for the Safe Streets sites it manages. The Sandtown Safe Streets site spending more than $5,000 in April at major shoe stores. Expenses necessary for community events, according to the receipts submitted by Catholic charities to the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The spending doesn't stop there. In 1 month, the Brooklyn Safe Street site spending $1,100 at Shoe City, $900 at Forever 21, and hundreds more at GameStop, Bath & Body Works, and Walmart, totaling $4,000 in March alone. The Brooklyn site shelling out $8,750 to Cornell University for staff development. The documents revealing how some of the federal COVID relief money was also spent by Safe Streets. In June, employees from 3 locations, Sandtown, Brooklyn, and Cherry Hill, flew to Los Angeles. The workers billing the city for everything from airfare to hotels and the hotel bar tab, totaling $2,500 worth of American Rescue Plan money. While these documents shed new light on some of this spending, it also raises new questions. The city is spending tens of thousands of dollars on staff training, but the public can't see who is getting that money, even though the funding comes from taxpayers. Seen time and time and time again. The names of who is doing the training for these workers redacted from these public documents. The Sandtown Safe Street site spending $11,700 in February for training. Cherry Hill doling out more than $20,000 to an unknown entity for training in February and March. These spending questions, just some of the answers that could come from an audit of Monzi.
We know it is taxpayer money, and so it doesn't matter, that it's going to a separate entity or a pass-through. It matters where the money's originating from, and the money's originating from the taxpayers' pockets.
Which is why Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer says the city agency needs to be more transparent in how it's spending. Created in 2020, Monzi is not regularly audited by the audit department, but that could change if this 7-member commission gives the green light and calls on the city auditor to do a probe. Councilman Schleifer, one of the 4 members telling Fox 45 News Monzi should be looked at.
Monzi is a city agency. It is right here in City Hall, and so an agency like that should just be part of the agencies that are audited.
The rest of the commission ignoring questions by Fox 45 News asking about an audit. With an expanding staff, funding coming from one-time federal infusions of cash and growing budgets, Councilman Schleifer argues the public deserves to know how their money is being spent. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Now, in a statement sent to Fox 45 News, Catholic Charities says it uses taxpayer dollars to purchase items like shoes for Baltimore City residents to build trust in the community. We have yet to hear back from Mayor Scott's office.
And it's not just members of the city council calling for an audit. Taxpayer advocate David Williams also sounding the alarm over how city money is being spent and that lack of transparency in Safe Streets.
Monzi needs to be audited. It is not on the regular audit schedule, and I don't know why. And I think a lot of Baltimore City residents probably don't know why it's not on that schedule, because it's consuming a lot of money. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. And if Monzi isn't spending the money correctly, and we don't know, we found this information out, but what else are they spending money on? So I think there are a lot more questions than there are answers, and an audit is the first step.
That brings us to our question of the day. Should there be an independent audit of Monzi? So far, 95% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Carroll County State's attorney wants to get tougher on drug dealers and enact harsher penalties in deals that result in death. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live with details on this right now. Maxine?
Well, Mary, he's hopeful that Maryland's General Assembly come January will take action similar to what's happening in neighboring Pennsylvania right now. In Maryland last year, there were 2,586 deadly overdoses, and fentanyl was involved in nearly 80% of them. In Pennsylvania, lawmakers are looking to enact harsher penalties in drug deals that result in death with Senate Bill 235, also known as Tyler's Law. Shoemaker says Maryland should follow suit, and he's spoken with at least one lawmaker who agrees.
This bill would be patterned after the bill that the Pennsylvania Senate just passed on October 2nd would impose a mandatory minimum of 10 years and a fine no less than $15,000 for selling drugs that result in someone's death.
Well, right now, Shoemaker says they can only charge dealers with possession with intent to distribute because manslaughter is often too tough of a case to make. He says State Delegate Christopher Tomlinson says he would sponsor such a bill come next session. We did reach out to his office today for comment, but we have not yet heard back. Reporting in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, the Carroll County State's attorney is not just calling for Annapolis to make changes to state drug policy. He's also demanding lawmakers address the juvenile crime crisis.
We're seeing like a revolving door, the same juvenile offenders over and over again, coming in the door and then going back out the door to continue to engage in their nefarious activities. There's not a whole lot we can do about it because we're hamstrung by the laws that are in place.
Shoemaker is one of a dozen state's attorneys from across the state of Maryland calling for an overhaul of juvenile justice reform. The group represents more than 5.4 million people, about 87% of the state's population.
And Kai, next month, lawmakers will hold a hearing on the state's juvenile crime response to laws. At the center of the conversation will likely be Juvenile Justice Reform Act and the Child Interrogation Act. Those policies limit children 13 and under from facing most charges and prevents police from questioning juvenile suspects without attorney and parent permission. Fox 45 News will bring you complete coverage of the hearing.
House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you'd like to contact them about public safety legislation, their phone numbers and email addresses are here on your screen.
And as concerns grow over the youth crime crisis, the danger is finding its way into the classroom. Just this week, 2 students brought loaded handguns to school in separate incidents. Alexa Asheville is live with the latest on those investigations for us. Alexa.
Yes, Mary, one of those incidents happened here in Baltimore City. The other, Baltimore County. Police there now saying the 15-year-old student is being charged as a juvenile.
at Joseph Briscoe Academy in Baltimore City concerned.
Like, why you gotta get a gun? Like,
after officials confirm a student follows through with a threat during an argument with a staff member and returns to the school with a loaded handgun.
That brings me some very deep concerns as to why we're not focusing more on conflict resolution with young people.
It's the latest of 2 incidents just this week. In Baltimore County, this letter was sent to parents after a student brought a loaded handgun to Sparrows Point High School. The assistant principal detailing the student was arrested, but what likely happens next, Maryland FOP President Sergeant Clyde Boatwright says, is part of the problem and needs to change.
They'll be immediately released.
Under current Maryland law, children 13 years old and younger cannot face charges for certain violent crimes. Those between the ages of 13 and 18 could be criminally charged for an incident like this, but according to Boatwright, likely released and with little consequence.
In some cases, they'll be released on electronic monitoring, as we've seen in the cases of some of the people that are accused of being involved in some of the most serious crimes in recent memory, i.e. the Brooklyn home shooting, where a young person is released on home monitoring, and yet they're still out to commit another act of violence against someone else.
Boatwright stressing accountability is key.
I think the appropriate consequence is if this their first offense, they go before a judge and the judge give them a penalty, whatever that penalty may be from a judge standpoint. And if it's more than their first offense, then you increase the penalty up to and including incarceration.
Again, we reached out to Baltimore City Police as well. The department has not yet said if the teen is facing charges in the case here in the city. Reporting live in North Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
A Baltimore County mother terrified her child would get caught up in the juvenile crisis. Fox 45 News continues our coverage as calls for change come in.
I know that the story of him dying, he did not die in vain. I know that he fought like a lion.
He lost a friend to the fighting in Israel, and his family members are taking shelter right now. The local impact of the war in the Middle East.
And another warm and dry day for tomorrow. Maybe not the mid 70s that we saw for today, up to about 71 tomorrow afternoon. And sunshine, but rain and highs barely at 60. Yup, they're on the way. I'll let you know when they get here and if it could impact your weekend plans. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
There is new information on the shutdown at BWI yesterday. Police say the man who claimed to have had explosives inside of his car at the airport has been taken to a local hospital for mental health treatment. Officers originally took the man into custody and halted incoming traffic while state fire marshals investigated his vehicle at the airport's lower entrance. Within the hour, his vehicle was deemed safe. No charges have been filed.
It definitely has me feeling like I'm a bad mom sometimes, but I know I'm not.
A frustrated Baltimore mother calls Fox 45 News saying she's at wit's end.
Yep. The mom says her 13-year-old daughter keeps getting suspended from school and running away.
That's right. Well, now she's worried things will escalate, fearing the teen could become another statistic of the state's juvenile system.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson live with more of her concerns.
Yes, Mary Kai, this is not the first parent we've heard from around the region saying that they're asking for what they're supposed to do with a child they say is out of control. Now, this Essex mom of 4 is not sharing her name or her face, but says her daughter is already on her second suspension of the school year after 5 or 6 suspensions last year. She's in the 7th grade. She says the teen frequently runs away and is sometimes brought back home by police. And while this mom says her daughter has never been arrested, she's fearing the bad behavior could escalate and echoing some parental concerns about the lack of juvenile consequences in Maryland.
I feel like they should be held accountable. It's got to be some consequences. You're not going to learn if you're getting a smack on the hand. You're not going to learn.
Well, this week, the mom even started a GoFundMe page trying to raise money to send her daughter to boarding school as she fears for her daughter's future, saying in part on that GoFundMe, I do not want her to become another statistic in jail, raped, killed, or a victim of human trafficking. Now, today we did share information about resources with this mom about the CINS program. That's the Children in Need of Supervision program. And data shared today by the Baltimore County Police Department shows 12 minors in Baltimore County have been part of this supervision program so far this year. Reporting live tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
All right, let's take a live look right now at the Inner Harbor, Ocean City, and also our weather radar right there. Perfect fall day outside, and we'll get similar weather tomorrow, but things are going to take a bit of a turn this weekend, Mary.
That's right. Meteorologist Jonathan Myers in now, looking ahead to some rain in our future, but we are savoring these last couple of days.
Yeah, if you have some vacation time that you want to take tomorrow, it's probably the time to do it.
Okay.
All right. So the
Sure.
rain comes Saturday. Not going to be the prettiest weekend. You can see pieces of our next weather maker that are coming together. There's one batch of rain that's up around Minneapolis, even some snow, and get that, winter storm warnings over portions of Wyoming, north of Denver, and then there's also a batch of rain, even some severe weather that's been in portions of Florida. That's moving east. This moisture going to consolidate together and give us our next weather maker, our next system coming through. For now, nice weather. That will continue through tomorrow. Maybe a slight bit cooler by tomorrow afternoon. Stormy weather to the south. There's the severe stuff. And then the rain up around Minneapolis. And again, those will kind of coalesce into the next system that's going to wet down at least Saturday, perhaps into Sunday as well. Much, much cooler temperatures. Off in the mid-70s, mile one Taos Kim. We're at 72 now. Winds out of the east at about 8. Our humidity 38%. Dew points. That's the measure of moisture in the air. Nice and dry in the mid-40s. Temperatures across, well, at least the mid-Atlantic south, generally in the low to mid-70s, even some upper 70s as you get west of the Appalachians. North, though, notice these 60s to near 70, and tomorrow winds will switch a little more northerly, so that'll keep our temperatures down just a skosh over what we saw for today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the future scan overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. Maybe a cloud or two, probably a mostly clear sky, we'll say, by tomorrow morning. Temperatures 40s, 50s. By tomorrow lunchtime, it looks like we're going to start spiking through the 60s and up likely to right around 70 degrees by tomorrow afternoon. And then I think as we head into the Saturday, Sunday timeframe, that's when things are going to get a lot more unsettled around here and a lot cooler. Take a look on our Friday. This is why I said take that day off. 71 degrees, clouds thicken up Friday night. Saturday, rain develops, 90% chance there. probably midday afternoon, going to be the worst of it. And coming up next hour, we'll go ahead and, or next half hour rather, we'll show you the future scan and help you plan out here when you want to do your stuff outside on Saturday. And also Sunday, it looks like morning showers and breezy, cool, 59, 60. That's the best we do with some sun on Monday. Scattered showers back on Tuesday, and a nice drying trend with milder temperatures by the middle of next week.
Jonathan, thank you. The conflict in Israel impacting people right here in Baltimore. We're hearing directly from somebody who lost a loved one to the war with Hamas. The O season is over, so what now? Taking a look back at what the Orioles accomplished and what comes next for the team.
The road through postseason baseball on Fox 45 is sponsored by Johns Hopkins Children's Center.
There's been time for the Orioles to process and step away from 3 games against the Rangers in the ALDS. But the O's poor October outing and abrupt ending courtesy of postseason exit by the first sweep all season is still fresh 2 days later. Players are gone. Some will not be back next season, while the young core will, with prospects expected to join them in 2024. For manager Brandon Hyde and GM Mike Elias, they have to wrap their minds around 101 wins, AL East title, to 0-3 in the postseason. A disappointing ending to a remarkable season.
It's a round bat and a round ball and a round earth that we live in, and sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way, and I think that happened for a lot of our guys, but they did everything they could to gear up and prepare for it, and I'm very, very proud of this group.
It was a really successful season, and overcoming so many odds and obstacles that are against us, and so many people thinking that we weren't going to be a playoff team, and all of a sudden we win 101 games and win the American League East. I mean, that's says a lot about a lot of people. Unfortunately, the postseason we just didn't play our best and ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw. But I'm going to have great memories of this team.
The result all came down to starting pitching. Brandon Hyde saying the starters can't get bounced and create multiple run holes in the second. That is too much in postseason baseball, and the Rangers took full advantage. Now the Birds head to their offseason, and you would think pitching has to be at the forefront of Mike Elias's mind.
All right, Morgan, thank you. Remember, you can still follow the latest postseason action with the Rip and Rock podcast. Rocco and Ryan Ripken break down every playoff matchup with new episodes on Monday. You can stream them anywhere you get your podcasts. And we are your exclusive home for the 2023 World Series. The Fall Classic begins Friday, October 27th. You can catch all the action right here on Fox 45. Coming up, questionable Safe Streets spending revealed by Fox 45 News. What a community advocacy group has to say about your findings, or our findings. The war in Israel continues to impact communities here in Baltimore. A local man shares his grief after his friend is killed in those attacks. Well, Fox 45 News tracking the latest on the war in Israel. The Israeli Defense Force is preparing to follow up its airstrikes on Gaza with a ground invasion. The IDF has called in over 300,000 reservists and is expected to move into Gaza any day now.
Meantime, that damage from the airstrikes is growing. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says more than 1,400 people are dead in Gaza. Israeli officials say the death toll in Israel is more than 1,200. 27 Americans have been killed in the conflict. We have team coverage on the latest developments from Israel and the impact the conflict is having in the United States.
Let's start with Rebecca Pryor, who spoke with someone right here in Maryland suffering due to the fighting. Rebecca?
Yeah, Mary and Kai, it's a story that's just scratching the surface on how many lives near and far are being impacted by this war. Today, I sat down with Baltimore businessman Edon Samarit. He tells me that his friend was one of the first lives lost in the attack, and now he lives in a constant state of panic, worried when or if another one of his loved ones will be next.
Got a message from a helmet supplier
For Baltimore business owner
Yes.
Edon Samaric,
4 missed calls from all over for that.
his kitchen design company on the back burner this week.
Just got to know that another soldier from my unit got killed.
As a barrage of bullets and missiles rained down on his native country.
His name is Ilan Moshe Yaakov. I didn't know him, but still, he's another soldier that should have not died.
Nothing comes before checking the barrage of texts
Yes, need to send the information.
and calls pouring in from friends and family.
And yes.
His parents and siblings notifying him they're taking cover.
My sister was in the shelter at least 30 times, if not 40 times since it started, like with her kids. I'm just worried about everything.
While the IDF soldiers he served beside as a young man forced back to the front lines, running toward the violence.
Nachche had 4 kids, all of them under the age of 10.
During the first day of attacks, Samaric receiving devastating news.
One of the soldiers sent me, hey, sorry to tell you, but Nachche got killed.
A friendship formed in basic training, a close confidant and dedicated father among the thousands of lives lost.
I crashed. I don't cry a lot, almost ever. And for 3 days, every half an hour, I would go to the side that my kids and my wife won't see and just like cry.
With the war only escalating and the death count still climbing, Samaric now doing all that he can to help from afar, from raising funds for tactical gear for his former unit,
For me to send for supplies.
to raising awareness.
And they fought pretty big group of, terrorists.
To raising awareness by flying Israel's flag outside of his shop and running it through the streets.
It's not something that, that you can, who's right and who's wrong. It's way past that. There's no right or wrong over here. There's just like pure evil.
After moving to America to start a family and a business at 23.
If I need to risk my life, it's not going to be a question.
Samaric's heart now has 2 homes. And right now, he says he's fighting for both.
My fear is that it can happen anywhere.
And should the war continue into the next month, Samaric says he feels a duty to return to his home country and enlist in the IDF. Reporting live from the control room, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. Well, last night, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, discussed the impact the fighting is having on the people of Palestine. They say it's important to separate innocent Palestinians from Hamas militants. While CAIR doesn't condone the Hamas attacks, it says Israeli forces have been limiting, the freedoms of the Palestinian people for decades.
The second this thing happened, you have politicians all over saying, oh, we stand with Israel. Okay, I get it. Maybe you can justify it and say you stand with the right to protect the people that are innocent. What about the Palestinians? Why haven't you opened your mouth and said anything for the past 16 years?
Well, the Maryland chapter of CAIR also says at least 7 high school and college students have reached out to the organization over the past 3 days, saying they're being harassed at school for expressing solidarity with the Palestinian people.
The discourse surrounding the war in Israel is creating controversy across the country. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins is taking a closer look at the issue.
Mary, pro-Palestinian groups held Day of Resistance rallies in cities and on college campuses across the country today. This as pressure mounts to show support for Israel. As Americans work to comprehend the violence in Israel and Gaza, some now backtracking initial posts. BLM Chicago saying they're not proud of this tweet, an illustration of what appears to be a Hamas fighter parachuting into Israel with the caption, "I stand with Palestine." Despite backlash, BLM Los Angeles leaving up a statement blaming Israel entirely for the violence. Prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump responding to the BLM posts.
The objective should be peace. It should not be violence. It should not try to elevate any one side over another.
Students at Harvard stepping down from board positions on student organizations who joined a statement blaming Israel for the deaths of its citizens.
They would never have done that if it was anti-Black or anti-gay. There is clearly a double standard of bigotry when it comes to Jews, when it comes to Israel.
Several CEOs now asking Harvard for a list of names of students who took part so they don't inadvertently hire any of them. At George Mason University, students gathering Thursday for an emergency pro-Palestinian protest to support the resistance. Critics also going after Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the daughter of Palestinian immigrants, for not condemning Hamas and for refusing to answer questions on Hamas. Tlaib issuing this response Wednesday to the Michigan Advance. I do not support the targeting and killing of civilians, whether in Israel or Palestine. The fact that some have suggested otherwise is offensive and rooted in bigoted assumptions about my faith and ethnicity. And when it comes to views of Hamas, YouGov polling from Monday shows Americans are divided by age. Those under 45 are much less likely to believe Hamas deliberately attacked civilians compared with older Americans. Mary?
Making headlines back here at home, police have made an arrest in a West Baltimore shooting from July. Detectives arrested 41-year-old Michael Childs for shooting a man in the leg after an argument on Pennsylvania Avenue in Druid Heights. Childs has been charged with attempted murder and is being investigated for his involvement in a carjacking. In Cecil County, a former sheriff's deputy has pled guilty to misconduct in office. His name is Kyle Thomas, and he served as a deputy from February of 2021 until July of this year. The charges stem from his alleged relationship with two women. Prosecutors say he used his office to threaten both women after their relationships ended. He's accused of sharing explicit images of the women. He's charged with 1 count of misconduct in office and 1 count of visual surveillance. Sentencing is set for January next year. Fox 45 News has obtained documents revealing Safe Streets has spent thousands of dollars on shoes, clothes, and trips to L.A. It's the most detailed look into Safe Streets and how the city's flagship gun violence prevention program spends taxpayer dollars. Here's just some of the details right now. The Sandtown Safe Streets site spent more than $5,000 in April at major shoe stores. The Brooklyn Safe Street site spent $1,100 at Shoe City in June, and employees from 3 locations flew to L.A. The workers billed the city for everything from airfare to hotels and the hotel bar tab. In addition to those expenses, the program is spending tens of thousands of dollars on staff development, but the documents don't reveal who that money is going to or what the training entails. Those revelations come as some city leaders and taxpayer advocates were already calling for an audit into Safe Streets.
That's right. Tonight we are joined by Eurypsy Morgan, a spokesperson for the government accountability group Peace. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So, Eurypsy, these new findings show the Safe Streets program is spending thousands of dollars on various things, as we mentioned, shoes, clothes, and cross-country trips. What are your thoughts of this?
I'm angry, to be honest. I'm frustrated and I'm angry. You know, my organization, Peace, we've been all over the city. We've been hosting town halls in all 14 councilman districts. And the needs of people in Baltimore are so great, particularly there's so many organizations ranging from homeless advocacy to child behavior to after school programs that could have used any fraction of what Safe Streets is spending on shoes. And the lack of accountability is what is making this such even worse. There's no accountability for Safe Streets.
We're already hearing calls for a Monzi audit from some members of the city council looking into the department's spending and its connection to Safe Streets. Do you think that will happen? Do you think it'll ever come to light?
Listen, I absolutely hope so. You know, I heard Councilman Yitzi Schleifer, who was advocating for an audit of Monzi. And honestly, this should be kind of a routine procedure with the types of agencies that get as much money as Monzi does. It sounded like that may have been the councilman's argument. And that was before this revelation of what exactly some of the things that Safe Streets has been spending money on. For example, if I'm not mistaken, there was a GameStop. There were bills from money that was spent at GameStop or Bed Bath & Beyond or Bath & Body Works. I mean, it's ridiculous. Any of these city organizations that uses this much money, taxpayer dollars, should be audited.
Eurypsy, do you believe Monzi and Safe Streets can exist if they have more transparency? And what's Mayor Brandon Scott's obligation to speak to the public about these findings?
Oh, they can absolutely exist. And listen, you'll find a lot of people who are asking questions like myself who actually support the idea of Safe Streets and support the idea of Monzi, their mission. But it's how they are implemented. It's not the idea, it's the implementation that's the problem. And if the mayor was willing to go along and ask for it and actually implement some sort of accountability, then I think he'd find that a lot more people support him than oppose him.
All right, Ripsey Morgan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your insight onto this, and we're going to continue to stay on it. Thank you.
Interim State Superintendent of Maryland Public Schools, Dr. Carrie Wright, says she wants that job permanently. In her first news conference, Dr. Wright said that she's applying for the full-time position beginning in July of next year. Dr. Wright was brought in to replace State Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry, who resigned earlier this month following a series of Project Baltimore investigations that raised concerns over his leadership. Those concerns included the decision to heavily redact state test scores, making less information available to the public. Dr. Wright called the state's math scores abysmal and said as a public servant, she plans to be open and transparent.
I think we need to be very transparent with our data. I think we need to be transparent with what we're finding is working and is not working. So I'm glad you asked that. Because sometimes you start off.
Well, Dr. Wright previously worked in Prince George's, Howard, and Montgomery County Public Schools.